Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
How long will it take you to develop a complete mixed virtual reality technology? He came back to his senses and immediately asked. Mixed virtual reality technology is a standard technology even in the Machina race. I have the ultimate algorithm, true simulation, and supercalculation, but I can only guarantee that I can develop it in a year. Moreover, it's useless for me to develop it alone. If we want the territory to completely enter the era of mixed virtual reality, the basic construction of the territory has to be done well. For example, mixed virtual reality satellites, mixed virtual reality signal towers, EarthWeb. You can say, only by modifying the entire territory can we welcome the era of mixed virtual reality. Not for the time being. Unless you can capture the Lord faction of a high-level mechanical civilization and transplant all the results of their civilization. This will be much easier. You can save at least 90% of your time. The ultimate Lord, Zhou Zhou, said. Zhou Zhou could not help but be disappointed. A year? Then it seemed that he would not need it for the time being. However, when he heard the other party say that he had plundered the results of a high-level mechanical civilization and transplanted them all, he could not help but fall into deep thought. It seemed like he could do it. However, he needed to develop to enough strength. At the very least, he would only dare to plot against a technological civilization of that level when he could independently conquer an empire-level lord faction comparable to the Elven Empire. Before he had that strength, he should develop his territory obediently and not think too much about it. At this moment, 2 black items were thrown over by the ultimate lord, Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou subconsciously took it and realized that it was 2 ordinary black helmets. He asked curiously, "What are these?" Virtual reality game helmet. A scrap technology unearthed from mixed reality virtual technology. I created about 300,000 virtual games myself, including RPG, ARP, RPG, FPS, multiplayer online battle arena, RAC, Pixel, Adventure, War, Immortal Cultivation, Combat, Tower Defense, Elimination, and various other types of games. Take it back and play with it. The ultimate lord, Zhou Zhou, said. Zhou Zhou, am I a child? Why do I have to bring it back to play? Maybe old Zhou will like it. Just as Zhou Zhou was about to emphasize that he was no longer a child, the ultimate lord, Zhou Zhou, said slowly, "All right, I'll bring it back and try it on old Zhou." Zhou Zhou obediently put away the 2 helmets. Then, Zhou Zhou chatted with the ultimate lord for a while before leaving. He returned to the territory of the Gold Merchant Lord and returned to the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Blazing Sun Kingdom. After Zhou Zhou returned, he immediately went to the Lord's shop. "Old Zhou, look what I brought for us." Zhou Zhou stood in front of the counter and said excitedly to Zhou Qingmin. At this moment, Zhou Qingmin was knitting. He was stunned when he heard this. Then, he stood up and came in front of Zhou Zhou. He saw the 2 helmets in Zhou Zhou's hands. "Why did you bring the helmet over?" Zhou Qingmin said in surprise. "You don't know it?" Zhou Zhou was even more surprised. "I'm your Lord Talent creation. Most of my knowledge depends on your experience. If you don't know me, there's a high chance that I won't know you either." Zhou Qingmin rolled his eyes at him. Zhou Zhou scratched his head. Well, if the ultimate lord, Zhou Zhou, did not tell him that this was a virtual helmet, he would probably think that this was just a normal helmet. This is a virtual reality game helmet. You can play virtual games. Do you know about virtual games? The kind that is 100% realistic in online novels. Zhou Zhou said, "There's such a good thing?" Zhou Qingmin's eyes lit up. Quick, bring it in." Okay. Zhou Zhou took the helmet and entered the shop. At the same time, at Li Ya's residence. At this moment, Li Ya was reading in the study. At this moment, Yu Chao knocked on the door and walked in. "My lady." "Young master, he want to play games again," Yu Chao said helplessly. Li Ya could not help but sigh faintly. She turned to look at herself in the mirror. Had her charm decreased? She became suspicious. The next day, in the Lord's shop. Zhou Zhou and Zhou Qingmin were each wearing a black helmet and lying on a recliner. Their expressions kept changing. Some were excited, some were disappointed, and some were helpless. A moment later, the two of them suddenly cursed in unison. Then, they took off the virtual game helmet. Why is there anti-addiction? Zhou Qingmin stood up cursing. Then, a very indignant expression appeared on his face. Zhou Zhou was also speechless. Maybe the ultimate lord subconsciously made it addictive. He guessed. Zhou Qingmin could not help but be speechless. He never expected that he would be punished by anti-indulgence, even though he was probably in his 50s or 60s, according to the physical age of Earthlings. Then, the two of them came back to their senses and looked at each other. They could see the excitement in each other's eyes. This virtual game is too fun, especially that Legend of the Sword Immortal. It's really good to play. I drew a golden immortal tier sword immortal on my first try. Samsara is fine too, but it's much more fun without teammates. The Western fantasy game, Dragonblood Continent, works too. The two of them discussed the games inside excitedly like two children addicted to games. This virtual helmet can be manufactured in large quantities later. It's definitely a money-making tool. Not only can I escape from reality, but I can also be happy in the game. Who can resist charging money? Zhou Qingmin suggested. Zhou Zhou could not help but think. Even though he had only played for a while, he could feel the astonishing potential behind the virtual game. Just as Zhou Qingmin had said, if he could fully develop its potential, the mist cores he could earn every day might even be comparable to or even surpass the mist cores provided to him every day by the monster ranches. I can give it a try. Zhou Zhou nodded. Then hurry up and do this. In some virtual games, having teammates and not having teammates are simply two different games. Zhou Qingmin's eyes lit up. As a small shop owner, he naturally wouldn't consider earning mist cores at all. What he cared about was his gaming experience. Zhou Zhou nodded and did not waste his breath. He first called out to the Ultimate Lord, Zhou Zhou, through his personal terminal and asked him to wear the virtual helmet technology to him through their personal terminals. Then, he began to call for Wanya. Your Majesty, Wanya is here. A mini image of Wanya appeared on his personal terminal. At this moment, Wanya was wearing a Gothic-made outfit and looked very obedient. Analyze the technology of this virtual helmet and promote it on a large scale. All the resources needed will be provided by the territory. Also, tell Prime Minister Zhang. If this virtual game has the potential to create a large amount of wealth, we can strongly support it and even promote it to the people of foreign races overseas. Zhou Zhou said, Yes, Your Majesty. Mini Wenya nodded and disappeared. Looks like I'll have many like-minded friends in the future. Zhou Qingmin could not help but sigh when he saw Zhou Zhou do all this. Then as the greatest contributor, can you try your best to serve better goods in the future? Zhou Zhou looked at him faintly. Even though the new goods in the past 2 days were not bad, they seemed a little normal compared to before. Okay. Zhou Qingmin grinned. Let's see what today's new goods are first. Zhou Zhou shook his head. Then, he went to the counter and looked down. He did not see a box containing new goods. Only I, the owner of the Lord's shop, can obtain the new goods. Zhou Qingmin seemed to have seen through Zhou Zhou's thoughts. He chuckled and came to the counter. He reached under the counter and took out 3 new boxes from nothing under Zhou Zhou's own eyes. Zhou Zhou did not say anything, but he dismissed some unrealistic thoughts. He reached out and opened the 3 boxes. The first box contained a book. Zhou Zhou had thought that it was an ordinary skill book. However, when he opened it, he was immediately stunned. Divine Art, Great Resurrection Spell. Divine Art Name, Great Resurrection Spell. Divine Art Quality, Special. Skill Description. At the cost of consuming a Holy Spirit Tier Faith Divine Crystal, recall the soul of the deceased from the netherworld and reconstruct the body, giving it rebirth. Spellcast Prerequisite 1. The resurrected person's strength is equal to or lower than the caster. Spellcast Prerequisite 2. The Great Resurrection spell can only be used once a day. Spellcast Prerequisite 3. You need to use the deceased's belongings as resurrection items. Spellcast Prerequisite. This great resurrection spell cannot revive God's spirits. Zhou Zhou looked at the divine art thoughtfully. This skill should be the great resurrection spell mastered by an archbishop. Otherwise, if it was the great resurrection spell that Carol Moali had mastered, it should be able to revive God's spirits. Without a doubt, the great resurrection spell on anyone was definitely an ability that countless lords of all races and even local lord factions dreamed of at the current stage. This was obvious from the humans' reaction to Zhou Zhou mastering the resurrection ability. However, this great resurrection spell was relatively ordinary with Zhou Zhou. There were 20 archbishops who had mastered the great resurrection spell in the shelter of the goddess of life alone after all. To him, the great resurrection spell was not rare at all. Forget it. There's no harm in having more skills. Zhou Zhou made up his mind to buy this good. Then, he looked at the next good. Then, the corners of his mouth twitched. Divine art, small resurrection spell. Divine art name, small resurrection spell. Divine art quality, special. Skill description, resurrect living beings that have died for less than 24 hours at the price of consuming one pious tier faith divine crystal. Spellcast prerequisite 1. The level of the target's fate and strength does not exceed the number of casters. Spellcast prerequisite 2. The target's physical body is 70% complete and his brain and heart are not destroyed. Could today's Lord shop be exclusively from the shelter? Zhou Zhou asked doubtfully. Then, he looked at the next item. It was a bottle of low-tier advanced grade divine water of life. The item description was created by Carol Moali. It could restore lost vitality to existences below the advanced grade of the low-tier deity level. It's really exclusively from the shelter. Zhou Zhou had a headache. But fortunately, each of these 3 goods was also very good. There were no trash goods. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath and looked up at Zhou Qingmin. How much are these 3 goods worth? The Great Resurrection spell is worth 10,000 legendary tier mist cores. Small Resurrection spell is worth 100 legendary tier mist cores. Low-tier advanced grade divine water of life is worth 1,000 legendary tier mist cores. Zhou Qingmin said, "So expensive?" Even though Zhou Zhou could afford it, he still felt his heart ache. There's a reason why it's expensive, Zhou Qingmin said seriously. He clearly agreed with the value of these 3 goods. Zhou Zhou could not find any reason to refute. He could only take out 11,100 legendary tier mist cores to buy the 3 goods. Then, he did not go anywhere else. He directly learned the Great Resurrection spell and Small Resurrection spell in front of Zhou Qingmin. Then, he did not go anywhere else. He directly learned the Great Resurrection spell and Small Resurrection spell in front of Zhou Qingmin. Just as Zhou Zhou was about to leave, Zhou Qingmin's voice sounded from behind. "No, I have to rest for a day. Next time. My wife is still waiting for me at home." Zhou Zhou waved his hand without turning his head. He was not obsessed with games. It was time to go back and accompany his delicate wife. "What's so fun about having a wife?" Zhou Qingmin complained. Zhou Zhou returned to his room and washed up. After eating the breakfast that Aaliyah had personally made, he walked out of the advanced grade Lord's paradise and came to the gate of summoning. He looked at the huge gate of summoning in front of him and chanted the summoning in his heart. The next second, the gate of summoning suddenly lit up with a bright white light. Then, a large number of subjects walked out. After spending 100 extraordinary tier mist cores to accelerate, the 10,500 new subjects quickly walked out of the gate of summoning. "Greetings, my lord, X 10,500. The 10,500 new subjects said respectfully. "Welcome to Blazing Sun City." Zhou Zhou nodded and smiled. Then, he asked all the professionals to stand up and realized that he had summoned a total of 336 professionals this time. Among them were an extraordinary tier elementary grade martial master, an extraordinary tier elementary grade explorer, an extraordinary tier elementary grade carpenter, an extraordinary tier elementary thunder elemental archmage, an extraordinary tier elementary radiant mage, an extraordinary tier elementary grade blacksmith, and an extraordinary tier elementary grade jewelry appraiser. The rest were life professionals and combat professionals below extraordinary tier. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly and asked the officials beside him to bring them to their respective places of work and life. After that, Zhou Zhou called Bai Yun, Wu Xian, and the others to gather all the territory soldiers outside the city gate. A moment later, at the city gate, more than 47 million soldiers were gathered here. Zhou Zhou did not call the soldiers of the Star Alliance over. There were too many monks and too little meat after all. Mugu's 250 million ranch monsters sounded like a lot. However, if it was distributed to more than 47 million soldiers, each soldier could only be distributed 5 to 6 monsters at most. Under such circumstances, the ranch monsters in Mugu should be provided to his territory soldiers first. Your Majesty, all the soldiers have gathered. At this moment, Bai Yun quickly walked over and said respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded and walked to the temporary platform to look at the soldiers below. The soldiers below also looked at the tall and handsome man on the platform with fanatical reverence. Soldiers, I'm sure you know the enemy we're dealing with today. That's the strongest Scarlet Legion from the Scarlet Empire called the Feidu Empire. It will be the strongest enemy we have faced since we set off. Are you afraid? Zhou Zhou's tiger eyes seemed to be burning with flames as he looked down at the tens of millions of soldiers in front of him. Not afraid. Not afraid. Not afraid. The soldiers let out earth-shattering roars. So what if the enemy was stronger? They were not even afraid of death. So why would they be afraid of powerful enemies? What they were most afraid of was a terrifying future where they could not fulfill the Lord's expectations and protect the lives of their citizens. Good, since you're not afraid. I'll get you guys to carry out a small drill first to sharpen the weapon in your hands. Otherwise, you'll be so afraid that you'll think your saber is blunt when you see that terrifying enemy on the battlefield. Zhou Zhou said in a low voice. Mugu, he said. I'm here. Mugu appeared out of thin air two to 3 steps behind Zhou Zhou. Bai Yun and the others looked at Mugu and His Majesty in surprise, not knowing what they wanted to do. In fact, they were already shocked when they first arrived outside the Blazing Sun Kingdom. This was because they realized that the vast number of monster ranches that surrounded the Blazing Sun Kingdom and made it look like a monster king had actually disappeared overnight. Even though their vision had widened a lot because of the disappearance of the monster ranch, in the hearts of Bai Yun and the other generals, the huge number of ranch monsters was also a natural defense line to protect the capital of the Blazing Sun. Now that this natural defense line had disappeared, as generals of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, they were naturally very worried. They had wanted to ask Mugu what was going on but could not find him, so they could only give up for the time being. They did not expect that Mugu was by His Majesty's side. Bai Yun and the others naturally did not know. After Zhou Zhou found out that Mugu had already put all the monster ranches into the Ranchland continent, he arranged for him to stay in the Advanced Grade Lord's Paradise. Bai Yun and the others had been looking for Mugu at the original monster ranch. Naturally, they could not find them. Open the Ranchland continent and sharpen the knives for my soldiers. Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, Zhou Zhou said calmly, seeing that the time was about right. Yes, Your Majesty. Mugu smiled. Then, he stretched out his right hand and saw a mini-continent appear in his palm. It was the Ranchland continent. Please don't resist. I will personally bring you to the place where His Majesty said you can sharpen your weapons. Mugu looked at the more than 40 million elite soldiers in front of him and said softly. Even though his voice was soft, under the power of his world deity position slot, it easily reached the ears of everyone present. Qi Xintian, Suan, Guoqiao, and the other territory experts immediately looked at this young man who usually did not perform well. Immortal? No, this aura seems to be the heaven-splitting true immortal. Qi Xintian was a little surprised. He was from an immortal Dao sect and quickly saw through Mugu's specialness. Suan also looked at him in surprise. Guoqiao subconsciously took out his axe and looked at Mugu eagerly. Then, he thought of something and glanced at Zhou Zhou, who was beside Mugu. He put away his weapon regretfully. At the same time, after Mugu finished speaking, no one made a sound. The scene was terrifyingly quiet. Mugu smiled. He could not help but praise the discipline of His Majesty's army. He raised his right hand high. Then, the mini-continent in his hand flew into the sky and stopped more than 10,000 meters in the sky. The next second, boom! A vast amount of scarlet fog was released from the Ranchland continent and quickly enveloped the more than 40 million soldiers on the ground below. Under the cover of the scarlet fog, all the soldiers quickly disappeared. In less than a moment, in front of the city gate, all living beings, including Zhou Zhou and Mugu, disappeared into the scarlet fog. On a scarlet continent, an incomparably huge, illusory scarlet sun stood in the sky, emitting a majestic scarlet light that illuminated the entire continent. A vast amount of scarlet fog was constantly derived with the illumination of the scarlet light, causing scarlet fog monsters to be born and become stronger from the fog. Roar! Woo-woo! Gaga! All kinds of monster cries spread throughout the entire continent. After Zhou Zhou and more than 40 million soldiers were teleported to the Ranchland continent, they saw this scene. I almost thought I was at the Crimson Overlord's base camp, Guo Qiao said after holding it in for a long time when he saw the scene in front of him. The others nodded in agreement. Ahem. I can also create life forms in the scarlet fog, so the world I created is indeed a little like the world of the Crimson Overlord. But I'm indeed His Majesty's true subordinate. Mugu coughed lightly and solemnly declared his faction. There's no time to lose. Let's start sharpening the weapons. Zhou Zhou did not waste his breath and said directly. Mugu nodded. Then, he flew into the sky and looked at the more than 40 million soldiers below. Next, I'll teleport you to the entrances of the various monster ranches on this ranch continent. When the time comes, there will be monster ranchers who manage the various monster ranches to guide you into the monster ranch to kill monsters. After all the ranch monsters are cleared, everyone will teleport back to His Majesty and leave this Ranchland continent together. Everyone, is there anything you don't understand? No. More than 40 million soldiers roared in unison. Mugu nodded. Then, he waved his right hand. The more than 40 million soldiers on the ground turned into 500 scarlet streams of light and flew towards the 500 monster ranches distributed on the ranch continent. Soon, earth-shattering battle cries sounded from the monster ranches in the Ranchland continent. On Zhou Zhou's side, Bai Yun and the others had the intention to come over and ask what was going on with this strange monster continent. Ask Mugu. As the owner of this Ranchland continent, he knows better than me. Zhou Zhou waved his hand. Seeing this, everyone went to surround Mugu. Zhou Zhou also took out the Bodhi Supreme. Kid, do you have any questions for me? Bodhi Supreme's lazy voice sounded. I saw Her Excellency, the Goddess of Life, previously. She said that I walked the right path of the Lord's law, but my heart was wrong. Do you know what Her Excellency, the Goddess means? Zhou Zhou immediately asked. If he did not resolve this problem, he would not be at ease comprehending the Lord's law in the future. Of course I do. Bodhi Supreme said proudly, there's nothing in the myriad worlds that I don't know. But its tone changed and it smiled. Do you really want to ask? Can I ask? Zhou Zhou frowned. Of course I can ask. I can also tell you the answer. However, there are some answers in this world that you will only feel deeply when you figure it out. Only then will you truly benefit greatly. If I answer for you, you might lose these benefits. When you understand in the future, I'm afraid you'll hate me. Bodhi Supreme said with a smile in his voice. Zhou Zhou was stunned. After a long silence, Zhou Zhou shook his head. Never mind. In that case, I'll figure it out myself. A wise choice. Bodhi Supreme praised. Zhou Zhou did not say anything. He felt that this Bodhi Supreme was not bad. If it was some greedy fellow, why would it care if he would lose something in the future? It might say it without thinking in order to obtain the knowledge in front of it. He did not expect Bodhi Supreme to not be greedy. Moreover, it was a little kind. He shook his head and didn't think too much about it. Half an hour later, with the cooperation of more than 40 million soldiers and 10,000 monster shepherds, the 250 million fog monsters were all destroyed. Then, they cleaned up the battlefield. even though there were many corpses of the ranch monsters. Fortunately, the Blazing Sun Kingdom had also obtained a huge number of loot's blast furnaces after obtaining a few enemy kingdoms in a row. There was no lack of epic tier and legendary tier high-level loot's blast furnaces. Therefore, with the help of all the soldiers, the corpses of the 250 million ranch monsters were all extracted into loots in less than a moment. Under the effect of the titles of King of Loots and Strongest Lord. In terms of the Mist Cores, he had obtained a total of more than 1.36 billion green bronze tier Mist Cores, more than 1.15 billion white silver tier Mist Cores, more than 840 million yellow gold tier Mist Cores, more than 717 million white platinum tier Mist Cores, more than 680 million diamond tier Mist Cores, more than 410 million extraordinary tier Mist Cores, and more than 80 million epic tier Mist Cores. There were also 1.375 billion king of yellow gold recruitment books, 1.50 billion king of yellow gold class change certificates, 300 million violent storm spirit recruitment books, 300 million violent storm spirit class change certificates, 14,100 fragments of the proof of legion, 110 million true faith tier scarlet crystals, over 85 million pious tier scarlet crystals, more than 53 million fanatic tier scarlet crystals, 132 holy spirit tier scarlet crystals, 10 million iron-eating bear pet eggs, 35 million fear falcon wings and fear falcon 3 radar, more than 1.5 billion units of original gold. As for the other unimportant spoils of war, there was no need to elaborate. Zhou Zhou looked at the number of recruitment books he had obtained today, and his eyes widened. His breathing could not help but quicken. Just the Mist Core alone, he had obtained gains worth nearly 13 million legendary tier Mist Cores. In terms of soldier-type recruitment books, he had even obtained a total of 450 million soldier-type recruitment books. He only had more than 47 million soldiers under his command, excluding the soldiers under the Star Alliance Master. The gains from the Monster Ranch today directly increased the total number of his soldiers by more than 9 times. It was not in vain that I spent so many high-level Lord Talent Crystal fragments to upgrade the Monster Ranch from White Platinum tier to Extraordinary tier. I've made a killing leveling up. Zhou Zhou muttered excitedly. He knew that with this qualitative change, his development speed would greatly increase in the future. No, now that I can add so many recruits every day, my development strategy and plan will have to change in the future. Zhou Zhou thought. With so many soldiers around, in the future, he would no longer have to be too careful when doing things. Then, he took these 450 million soldier-type recruitment books to the Gate of Summoning and threw them all in. Then, he spent 100 extraordinary tier Mist Cores to summon them all in one go. Soon, a total of 450 million recruits appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. Since there were too many people, the wide venue specially reserved for the new recruits was filled. Bai Yun had no choice but to come over again to coordinate the order like yesterday. Zhou Zhou looked at the endless number of recruits in front of him, and the smile on his face became even more obvious. Even though these recruits were only Black Iron tier elementary grade novices. However, with the blessing of the epic tier War Master God tier, they would definitely have a promising future. My strength just now was 47,547,748 soldiers. Now that there are these 450 million new recruits, my total military strength is 497,547,748 new recruits, in addition to the more than 26 million soldiers of the Star Alliance. The total number of soldiers I can control has reached 523.54 million. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath. His expression was filled with unconcealable excitement. One had to know that there were only about 1 billion scarlet monster soldiers surrounding the Night Empire. And this quantity, Zhou Zhou was even confident that he could reach it tomorrow. Why was this still the Night Empire's faction quests? In 2 days, I can lead my troops to destroy all the scarlet monster soldiers surrounding the Night Empire. Zhou Zhou suddenly felt ambitious. Actually, when he received the Night Empire's faction quests, he felt that the chances of the Night Empire obtaining help from the Divine Sword Empire were very slim. They were all from the 5 great empires of the human race after all. Now that the calamity of all races covered the entire high continent and even the myriad worlds, the Night Empire was already in such a dangerous situation. The Divine Sword Empire's situation would definitely be better than the Night Empire, right? Not necessarily, but very likely. Zhou Zhou opened all the spatial teleportation arrays and successfully arrived at the Divine Sword Empire. When he arrived, he realized that the Divine Sword Empire was also a human empire that needed help. However, he did not think too much about it when he accepted the faction quests. After all, he had to give it a try no matter if it was possible to save the Night Empire. Even if he did not reach the hope of the Night Empire in the end, he would at least be rewarded for completing the faction quests. In short, to him, it was not a loss. His thoughts had suddenly changed. He definitely had to do faction quests. However, if he opened all the spatial teleportation arrays and realized that the Divine Sword Empire was also unable to help the Night Empire, he could completely rely on his robust military strength to resolve the crisis of the Night Empire alone. They might even be able to help the Divine Sword Empire. If he could do this, putting aside whether to resolve the current crisis of the human race, his faction points would definitely increase. Moreover, his vast number of recruits could also use this opportunity to increase their strength rapidly. Zhou Zhou thought for a long time before coming back to his senses. He would think about it in the future. Let's resolve the current crisis first. At this moment, in Zhou Zhou's heart, the Smelting Yin Scarlet Army was no longer a crisis that made him feel difficult. What he needed to consider now was how to minimize their losses to obtain this victory when they were confident of winning. On the other side, Feng Luo and the other generals also saw the 450 million new recruits in front of them. They looked at each other with blank eyes, feeling that the scene in front of them was even a little unreal. This was 450 million new recruits. Among the empire-level lord factions of the human race, there were about this level of military strength. But the key was, they were only a human beginner kingdom that had just been established a few days ago. The newly built beginner kingdom had soldiers comparable to a beginner empire-level lord faction. Was this reasonable? Reasonable, my **s. Even the supreme resistance would curse at how ridiculous it was. There are too many recruits, and their strength is only at the Black Iron Tier elementary grade. I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to participate in tonight's battle. Compared to the excitement of the generals, as veterans, Bai Yun and Wu Xian were much calmer. There were many recruits in front of him, but their strength was too low. If they were to directly line up on the battlefield, not only would they be useless against a powerful enemy like the Scarlet Army, they would probably die in large numbers. That would be better than not going to the battlefield. It was a waste of troops. I'll leave this to you. When Zhou Zhou heard this, he looked at Bai Yun and Wu Xian, the 2 legion commanders and the deputy commander. The 2 of you will join forces with the other generals who have mastered military morale. Today, you will lead these recruits to train their soldiers wantonly. As for where to train my soldiers, let's go to the Night Empire. There are enough scarlet monsters there. Let's strive to increase the strength of these 450 million recruits to the White Silver tier before the flame-refining Scarlet Legion arrives tonight. As for the Dark Martial Alliance, I'll lead the troops myself, Zhou Zhou said. It was not difficult to do this with the epic tier Lord Talent, Blessing of the War God. Yes, Your Majesty, Bai Yun and Wu Xian said respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded. Your Majesty. At this moment, Zhang Yuanqi walked over from afar and came in front of Zhou Zhou. Refugees have arrived at our Blazing Sun Kingdom. Currently, the officials of our Blazing Sun Kingdom's various states are accepting these refugees to become subjects of our Blazing Sun Kingdom. He reported respectfully. Oh, how many refugees came today? Zhou Zhou was interested. He had a deep impression of the 76 million subjects last time. A total of 90 million subjects have come this time. Zhang Yuanqi was excited. Zhou Zhou was stunned. How many? He subconsciously asked again. 90 million. Moreover, there are more than 80 million female subjects inside. The situation with General Yu Luo did not happen with them this time. They are all just refugees. Zhang Yuanqi said excitedly. After he found out that the territory had another 450 million male subjects, he was originally a little worried that the territory would return to its previous situation. Now that they saw the refugees coming so fiercely, they immediately felt much less worried. He sighed with emotion. In this world filled with war, even though extraordinary tier power was popular, it was normal for women to be as strong as men and even surpass them. However, in war, perhaps it was because men were still passionate about fighting, therefore, more men died. Due to the constant deaths of men in war, the number of female subjects in most Lord Kingdom forces far exceeded the number of male subjects. Moreover, the number of male subjects left in the country was mostly old, weak, sick, and young. The Blazing Sun Kingdom, on the other hand, had the Prime Minister worried about how to solve the problem of the territory's prosperity and decline every day. This could definitely be considered a strange scene among the lord factions of all races. There are even more than last time. At the same time, when Zhou Zhou heard Zhang Yuanqi's words, he could not help but mutter. Then, a smile appeared on his face. He roughly knew what was going on. It was probably because the Beauty Lord talent had been upgraded to the White Platinum tier that the appearance of the territory's subjects had increased again. As a result, his territory became famous again overnight. In addition, the Lord factions of the human race had probably already received news from the higher-ups of the human race and escorted the refugees to his Blazing Sun Kingdom, greatly reducing the casualties of the refugees. These two main factors, coupled with some small reasons that he might not know, caused the number of refugees heading to his territory to increase again. Settle them well. They've all come from afar. Don't disappoint them about our new home. Zhou Zhou came back to his senses and said seriously to Zhang Yuanqi. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhang Yuanqi retracted the excitement on his face and nodded seriously. At this moment, a female figure appeared in the distance. Snowflakes floated within 10 meters of his body as he held a snow umbrella. The edge of the umbrella was slightly lowered, making he look mysterious. After walking in, she raised the edge of the umbrella, revealing her exquisite face that emitted the female charm of the Ice Ghost race. It was Lady Iceflower, Vicky. Your Majesty, I'm not late, right? Vicky smiled. You came back just in time. Zhou Zhou was stunned for a moment before smiling. How's the construction of the Divine Kingdom? He asked curiously. Thank you, Your Majesty, for rewarding me with those 4 dilapidated Divine Kingdoms. With the 4 Ice Demon God spirits of the Ice Demon Kingdom as the foundation, the construction of my Divine Kingdom is going quite smoothly. Moreover, I've refined all their dilapidated Divine Kingdoms into a Divine Kingdom that belongs to me. As a result, even though my Divine Kingdom has just been built, it's already similar to the Divine Kingdoms of those God spirits who have become gods for 3,000 to 4,000 years. Vicky sighed. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. The 4 dilapidated Divine Kingdoms of the Ice Ghost race were of no value to him and his other subordinates. Since that was the case, then giving it to Vicky was naturally the best choice. Your Majesty, these are the treasures I found in the 4 dilapidated Divine Kingdoms. Vicky took out a spatial ring and handed it to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou took it and read it carefully. Then, he shook his head in disappointment. Most of these treasures were low-tier deity level and mid-tier deity level medicinal herbs, minerals, and other materials. A small number were the personal collections of some god spirits, such as exquisite ice sculptures, antiques with collecting significance, letters from certain relatives. Other than that, there was nothing else of value. I knew it. What good stuff can an ice ghost god spirit that doesn't even have a few low-tier divine artifacts have? He thought. However, even so, he put away the ring. Well done, this award is for you. Zhou Zhou took out the low-tier deity-level advanced grade, divine water of life that he had just bought from the Lord shop and gave it to the other party. Thank you, Your Majesty. When Vicky saw the bottle of life divine water, she immediately took it with a surprised expression. Your Majesty, when do we set off? After putting away the divine water of life, she asked expectantly. He, who had just obtained the divine water of life, could not wait to show her strength to His Majesty. "There's no hurry. I have one more thing to deal with," Zhou Zhou said. A moment later at the Night Temple Lord's office. "I'm here to see the Temple Lord," Zhou Zhou said politely to the extraordinary tier knight guarding the office. "Your Excellency, unfortunately, the Temple Lord just went to the abyss an hour ago. I don't think he'll be back today." The guard knight naturally knew Zhou Zhou's name. He looked at the handsome god spirit like Zhou Zhou curiously and said politely. Zhou Zhou could not help but be stunned. What a coincidence. They were actually only an hour apart? He wanted to use the knight's sacred token to contact the other party, but when he thought about how the other party was in a dangerous place like the abyss, it would not be good if he distracted the other party because of him. He could only give up. "Then I'll come again next time." Zhou Zhou dismissed the idea of visiting by he. In any case, he was only here to look for him because of a small matter that he did not have to be anxious about. It would not be too late to do it in the future. Lord of the Blazing Sun, if you have something you want to deal with the Temple Lord, even though the Temple Lord is not around, you can look for the 13th Deputy Temple Lord first. The 13th Deputy Temple Lord is currently in charge of acting as the Temple Lord while the Temple Lord is not around. The 13th Deputy Temple Lord can do what the Temple Lord can do. The guard knight kindly reminded, seeing that Zhou Zhou was about to leave. Zhou Zhou was stunned. The Night Temple had a total of 12 permanent Deputy Temple Lords. 3 of them had the strength of a high-tier deity level, while the other 9 Deputy Temple Lords also had the strength of a mid-tier deity level. He had long known this information over the past few days. When did the 13th Deputy Temple Lord appear? Someone new? Zhou Zhou took the initiative to ask without hiding his doubts. Your Excellency, the Blazing Sun, you might not know this. This 13th Temple Lord was indeed newly established yesterday. Speaking of which, you know that Lord. It's His Excellency Rob Allen, the god of Silver Star Knights who has just broken through to the god's spirit realm, the guard knight said. Zhou Zhou's eyes widened slightly. Rob Allen? That guy had broken through to the god's spirit realm? Sir Rob Allen? When did he advance to become a god spirit? Zhou Zhou came back to his senses and asked curiously. Just last night. The guard knight puffed out his chest proudly. When His Excellency, the god of Silver Star Knights, broke through to the god spirit, it was said that the stars in the starry sky where he was were all shining brightly. The starlight illuminated an area of 1,000,000 kilometers as if it was daytime. Especially one of the silver stars. Silver starlight descended and enveloped the god of Silver Star Knights. According to the higher-ups of the race, such a phenomenon of becoming a god spirit is extremely rare even in the entire history of the human god spirits. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. There were also many records about the phenomenon of becoming a god in his mind. If Rob's ascension phenomenon was really as the Guardian Knight had said, it would definitely be an outstanding ascension phenomenon. With such a god spirit with such a god-tier phenomenon, as long as he had enough potential and opportunities in the future and did not die midway, there was a high chance that he would reach the true god tier. Temple Lord, by he really didn't choose the wrong disciple. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. May I ask where His Excellency the god of Silver Star Knights is? Zhou Zhou said politely. In the office of the 13th Deputy Temple Lord. Let me take you there. The guard knight took the initiative to say. That's troublesome. Zhou Zhou nodded. Your Excellency, the Blazing Sun, is too kind. The guard knight smiled and led Zhou Zhou to a corridor. Soon, the two of them arrived at the door of the 13th Deputy Temple Lord's office. After Zhou Zhou parted ways with the guard knight, he looked up to the right of the door. He realized that other than the 13th Deputy Temple Lord title, there was a line of words, God of Silver Star Knights, below it. God of Silver Star Knights? Looks like this is Rob Allen's God Spirit Lord title, Zhou Zhou thought. Then, he knocked on the door without thinking too much. Enter. A familiar voice came from the door. Zhou Zhou pushed the door open and entered. He saw Rob Allen writing on the table. He had a serious expression and his brush did not stop. At a glance, he really had a hint of by his temperament. Zhou Zhou. Rob Allen looked up and was stunned when he saw Zhou Zhou. Then, a surprised expression immediately appeared on his face. He turned into specks of starlight and flew in front of Zhou Zhou. Then, he condensed his body again and said with a smile, "I wanted to look for you today. I didn't expect to see you so soon." "Looking for me? What's the matter?" Zhou Zhou was stunned. "Don't you know? I've already broken through to become a god spirit. Moreover, the key item for me to break through to the god spirit realm was provided by you." After Rob Allen finished speaking, he raised his right hand and a starry sky divine sword that emitted specks of starlight appeared in his hand. Zhou Zhou looked at it. He realized that this was one of the divine artifacts he had traded to the human race not long ago in order to ask the human race to protect his refugees, the Star Spirit Technique Sword. Rob Allen stroked the Star Spirit Technique Sword in his hand obsessively as if he was looking at his lover. "I'm already an advanced grade legendary tier expert. I'm just short of comprehending a complete low-tier deity-level law skill and condensing my divine persona to achieve the God Spirit slot. However, even this last step stopped me for a long time. Until one day, I heard that the clan obtained a divine artifact that contained the law skill of the Star Law from you. After that, the clan even decided to give me the low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifact that contained the Star Law just to give me more help in breaking through to the God Spirit realm. I'm very grateful to the higher-ups of the human race who made this decision. This Star Spirit Technique Sword is indeed very suitable for me. It contains the profundity of the law of stars. And my physique is also the star body constitution of the Star Law divine body. Therefore, my physique can be said to be extremely compatible with this divine artifact." Later on, during the process of comprehending the Star Spirit Technique Sword, I naturally successfully comprehended my Star Law skill, thereby making up for the last gap in becoming a god. Then, I successfully advanced to a god spirit. At this point, Rob Allen took a deep breath and looked up at Zhou Zhou seriously. "Your Star Spirit Technique Sword has helped me a lot in becoming a god. Moreover, it's a critical help. I owe you a favor. If you need any help in the future, you must look for me. I'll definitely help you with all my might as long as it's not against my principles." Rob Allen was actually very smart. He understood. Other than the reason he had just mentioned, there was probably another very important reason why he could obtain this Star Spirit Technique Sword. He was a friend of the Lord of the Blazing Sun, and they were friends who got along very well. It was precisely because of this relationship that the higher-ups of the human race sent the Star Spirit Technique Sword to him, who had yet to become a god. Behind this behavior, he might have the intention to rope in and be good to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and said, "I really need your help with something now." Rob Allen was stunned, as if he did not expect the time to cash in so quickly. Then, he laughed heartily. "Tell me, what is it?" "There will be a huge battle in my territory tonight. I want to ask you for help when the time comes." "Okay, I'll help you then." Rob Allen agreed without thinking. In his eyes, no matter how fast Zhou Zhou developed, his opponents would at most be some extraordinary tier, epic tier, and legendary tier enemies. He felt that this was already an overestimation in his heart. Therefore, he didn't feel that there would be any accidents if he helped him with such a small favor, so he agreed readily. "I'm not done yet." Zhou Zhou was speechless. "No need to say anything else. Just remind me when the time comes. I'll definitely go. I will definitely help you deal with the opponent, no matter who it is." Rob Allen said readily. "Are you sure?" Zhou Zhou's expression was strange. This guy had just broken through to the low-tier deity-level elementary grade. Why was he so arrogant? Should he tell the other party that there were high-tier deity-level opponents among his enemies? Should he tell the other party that there were high-tier deity-level opponents among his enemies? Since the other party was so confident, perhaps he really had a trump card to deal with them? After all, he was Baihe's last disciple and the future candidate of the Night Temple Lord. He should have such methods, right? Of course. Rob Allen nodded. Then, the two of them chatted for a while. Baihe suddenly remembered that the other party seemed to be here for something. "By the way, "You're here for something, right?" Bai he asked. "There's indeed something, but it's just a small matter." Zhou Zhou flipped his right hand and saw a large stack of complete proof of legion appear in his hand. "What's this?" Rob Allen took a copy of the proof of legion. When he saw what it was, he looked at the proof of legion in his hand, and then at the thick stack of proof of legion in Zhou Zhou's hand. He subconsciously swallowed. "Don't tell me. These are all the proof of legion?" he said in disbelief. "They're indeed all proof of legion. There are a total of 100 of them." Zhou Zhou told them the ultimate goal of his trip. "I want to sell these proofs of legion to you." In the future, his monster ranch would be able to produce at least 100 proof of legion every day. He did not want to establish a new army for the time being. It was useless to keep renewable resources like them. Since that was the case, he might as well take it out and sell it, since he was assured that the biggest possible buyer would be the Night Temple at this stage. Rob Allen looked at the proof of legion in his hand and suddenly asked, "You should have raised a group of monsters that can drop the proof of legion, right?" "That's right." Zhou Zhou was not surprised, since this was very obvious. Rob Allen took a deep breath. Even though he had guessed the reason, he was still very surprised to see so many proof of legions in front of him. In the entire Human Lord faction, other than the fact that the 5 human empires all had official empire-level armies, most of the other kingdom-level lord factions and lower-level human lord factions were actually armies that had not been recognized by the Supreme Will. The army they had was formed by the Lord gathering the soldiers under his command together. Then, the Lord gave them the name of the army. This was a self-built army. It was not like having an official army formation with upgradable army buffs and other army interface functions. As for the lords who had an official army, they had also bought the proof of legion from the territory of other high-level lord factions. It was not the proof of legion he had obtained at all. Speaking of which, this self-built army was naturally much weaker than those with official army formations. If they could have more official armies among the lord factions of the human race, if the strength of their human race did not increase much in the short term, as long as their army level increased, their human army of the same level would definitely be able to suppress or even crush armies of the same level as other races. What to do? An army with an official organization was much stronger than an army without an official organization. At the thought of this, Rob Allen no longer hesitated. "We want these 100 proof of legion." "What do you want?" he asked. "Do you have a military formation here? The kind that can gather the strength of many people and form a higher-level combat strength?" Zhou Zhou asked. In the past, the greedy wolf howling moon array could be said to be a sharp weapon of his army. However, as the strength of his soldiers continued to increase, he had more than 600 epic tier experts and even 160,000 extraordinary tier soldiers under him now. Under such circumstances, the greedy wolf howling moon array, which could only form the highest extraordinary tier strength in the past, naturally could no longer keep up. Therefore, he needed a stronger military formation to have stronger strength. A powerful military formation. What level do you need? Rob Allen thought for a moment and asked. True God tier? Zhou Zhou probed. Rob Allen was speechless. You really dare to ask for it? We don't have it, and you can't afford it even if you have it. Zhou Zhou did not refute. He was just asking casually. What about high-tier deity level? Rob Allen shook his head. Based on the value of these 100 proof of legion, I can only give you low-tier deity level military formations. Firstly, I can't buy higher level ones. Secondly, I can't come into contact with them for the time being. But let me warn you first, even though that military formation can reach the power of the low-tier deity level intermediate grade, it will also cost a lot to build this army. How so? Zhou Zhou asked. That military formation comes from the Divine Sword Empire and is called the Small God Sura Myriad Spirit Army Formation. It needs at least 100,000 extraordinary tier experts, 1,000 epic tier experts, or 10 legendary tier experts to activate this military formation. Moreover, we need 1 low-tier divine-level intermediate-grade divine crystals or 1,000 legendary tier mist cores to activate it. Moreover, after activating it, It can only release a full strength attack equivalent to an intermediate grade low-tier deity. After that, it needs to replenish divine crystals or mist cores before it can be activated again. We didn't actually use it many times in the war after obtaining this military formation because this consumption is relatively high. We placed it in the treasure vault. If you need it, I can get someone to bring it over for you now, Rob Allen said. This military formation could be used without caring about consumption in desperate situations. However, there was no need to spend so many human and financial resources in ordinary wars. After all, it was not like the human race did not have low-tier deity-level experts. It was just that there were not many of them. The reason why he said all the pros and cons was also to make the other party give up. After all, judging from the consumption alone, this military formation was completely a gold mine. The cost-performance ratio was too low. Even though he was envious of the 100 points of proof of legion, he would not deliberately cheat his benefactor for this. Zhou Zhou's thoughts were different from the other parties. Even though he did not have many divine crystals, he had so many mist cores that he could not finish spending even if he wanted to. Even though his territory needed a lot of resources to invest, he had too many mist cores. His mist cores were still increasing every day on the basis of the monster ranch and the benefits of the war, even though his territory consumed some of them every day. What? Even though the small God Sura Myriad Spirit Army formation could release the full strength attack of a low-tier deity-level intermediate-grade powerhouse, it was a gold-devouring cave? Please give me this military formation, Zhou Zhou said seriously. Rob Allen was stunned. A moment later, Zhou Zhou played with a mini silver sword carving in his hand as he walked towards the Imperial Ancestral Temple. Wisps of faint sword energy kept spinning around the mini sword carving, looking a little strange. Formation Treasure, Small God Sura Sword. This is the formation treasure to use the Small God Sura Myriad Spirit Army formation. It's equivalent to the Greedy Wolf Totem. Not only is the formation method of the Small God Sura Myriad Spirit Army formation engraved inside, but it's also the energy core of the military formation. Zhou Zhou casually took out 1,000 legendary tier mist cores and let the Small God Sura sword carving in his hand absorb them all. After absorbing it, he saw the Small God Sura sword carving emit a faint silver sword energy light. What surprised Zhou Zhou was that a portion of the sword chi emitted by the Small God Sura sword could even shuttle back and forth in the space on his palm. It actually had the ability to penetrate space. An offensive God-tier army formation with the ability to tear through the air. These 100 points of proof of legion were well spent. An even more obvious smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face. A moment later, the temple. In front of the ancestral altar, Zhou Zhou looked at the notification on the ancestral altar and requested him to offer 10 epic-tier mist cores first. Zhou Zhou was stunned. It was actually not 10 legendary tier mist cores? Could it be that today was not the legendary tier ancestral blessing, accompanying the army as a national doctor? Previously, he would also come here on time every day and spend 10 legendary tier mist cores to obtain a legendary tier ancestral blessing. It followed the military national healer. Was there going to be a change today? Zhou Zhou was curious and took out 10 epic tier mist cores and placed them on them. Soon, a text notification appeared. You have obtained an ancestral blessing. Earthquake, epic tier war enhancement. Earthquake, extraordinary tier war enhancement. You will temporarily have a chance to use the law skill, Earthquake. You can release a level 10 earthquake that affects a radius of 100 kilometers at a designated location. There's actually a war enhancement that takes the initiative to be released? Zhou Zhou looked at the war enhancement in surprise. This was the first time he had seen this type of war enhancement. Zhou Zhou looked at the war enhancement thoughtfully. This war enhancement should have been given to him by Zhang Hong, the ancestor statue of the human race on Cerulean planet that he had just obtained. No wonder the ancestral blessing only sacrificed 10 epic tier mist cores this time. Zhou Zhou thought. This was because ancestor Zhang Heng's statue was at the epic tier. The mist core that his ancestral blessing needed to be sacrificed was naturally at the epic tier. Then, his gaze landed on the war enhancement itself. A magnitude 10 earthquake is no joke, Zhou Zhou muttered. One had to know that there had never been a magnitude 10 earthquake in the history of the human race on Earth or the cerulean planet. A magnitude 10 earthquake was already considered a huge earthquake. It was the upper limit of earthquakes on the cerulean planet. If there was an earthquake stronger than a magnitude 10 earthquake, it could only be caused by a destructive meteorite impact or a large-scale superweapons war. Even in the extraordinary tier world of the high continent, a level 10 earthquake should be quite terrifying. Zhou Zhou was very happy. This epic tier war enhancement was a little strong. However, it was good to be stronger. Moreover, it came at the right time. A moment later, outside blazing Sun City, more than 47 million soldiers were gathered here. Linger, the Green Phoenix Lord, Nong Chenglin, the Gold Merchant Lord, the Paper Immortal Lord, and the other lords of the Star Alliance who had just rushed over with their troops were stunned when they saw this scene. Their eyes were filled with confusion. What was going on? It had only been a night since they last met. Where did this vast army come from? When they found out from Bai Yun that this army not only belonged to their emperor, but it also had nearly 500 million troops, excluding them, they were completely shocked. 500 million troops. Their total population was only 1.4 billion. The army in front of him was actually comparable to more than a third of China's population. Linger had a proud expression. The Green Phoenix Lord had an incredulous expression. Ridiculous. The usually calm Gold Merchant Lord could not help but ask. The Paper Immortal Lord's mouth also widened adorably. After a long time, when the lords of the Star Alliance came back to their senses, they looked at each other and could see the excitement in each other's eyes. The unbelievable scene in front of him. It undoubtedly proved once again that choosing to join His Majesty the Blazing Sun was the right choice. At this moment, a figure flew over from afar and arrived in the sky. It was Zhou Zhou. There are so many people. Zhou Zhou looked at the more than 500 million soldiers below and could not help but click his tongue. With his eyesight as a chaos human, he could not see the end of the crowd. It could be seen how terrifying the sea of people in front of him was. He took a deep breath and began to give orders. Firstly, he would first arrange for these 450 million Black Iron Tier elementary grade recruits. Zhou Zhou ordered by Yun, Wu Xin, and the other heroic generals who had mastered military morale to lead these recruits and 20 million veterans to the Night Empire on a galaxy to clean up the scarlet fog monsters around the territory of the Night Empire. More than 26 million soldiers of the Star Alliance followed. The galaxy was a special spaceship that represented friendship with the Machina race. Even though it was only a diamond-tier advanced-grade spaceship on the surface, however, its actual configuration was a low-tier deity-level god-tier spaceship. In particular, the low-tier deity-level elementary-grade folded space function inside gave the interior of the galaxy a small world. According to Wanya, the galaxy had a low-tier deity-level elementary-grade folded space function. The life space contained in it could accommodate up to 1 billion humans working and living inside. It was naturally more than enough to accommodate 500 million soldiers. Zhou Zhou had a total of 10 of such spaceships with the help of his Lord Talent. The only pity was, Zhou Zhou could not build a galaxy spaceship manufacturing factory to make more galaxy spaceships even with his current resources because the configuration of the galaxy was too high. Fortunately, according to Wanya, he could save up 2 galaxies from the god-tier materials that Vicky had brought him just now until he had enough. After Zhou Zhou gave the first order, he gave the second right on the heels of that. This second order was to get 10,000 extraordinary tier soldiers, 100 epic tier soldiers, 2 legendary tier soldiers, as well as the 2 god spirits, Heros and Zhe Wu, to bring the 10 Apocalypse satellite, 9 given to him by the ultimate Lord Zhou Zhou to the place where the Flame Scarlet Legion would pass through. They would use the Apocalypse satellite, 9 to kill them continuously. It would take at least a day until he, Zhou Zhou, completely eliminated all the other party's enemy forces. Zhou Zhou also planned to make a huge investment. 10 Apocalypse satellite, 9 had been used continuously for at least a day. The consumption of mist cores alone was not a small number after all. However, Zhou Zhou believed that everything was worth it. The loots dropped by the other party's death were enough for him to easily recover his capital. As for the third and last order, Zhou Zhou would personally lead the remaining 20 million elite troops to crusade against the Dark Martial Alliance. According to the mystic Heaven Lord, after the Black Martial Lord gathered the forces of more than 1,000 lords in the Black Martial Alliance, there were already more than 6 million soldiers in the Black Martial Alliance's headquarters. The strength of the soldiers was about between Black Iron tier and White Platinum tier. There was not a single Diamond tier or higher soldier. A soldier of this strength, not to mention Zhou Zhou, the more than 20 million veterans. Even if there were only more than 200,000 elite soldiers left in the entire country when the Aurora Kingdom was on the verge of destruction, it was enough to defeat it. There were almost no high-end combatants after all. In addition, Zhou Zhou's danger prediction did not give him a warning. Therefore, Zhou Zhou was not worried that something would happen to him on this trip. Let's go. The victory of today's battle will definitely belong to us. With Zhou Zhou's order, more than 500 million soldiers were sucked into the galaxy. In less than a moment, the place where there was a sea of people previously became empty. Zhou Zhou did not follow the veteran to the base of the Dark Martial Alliance. Instead, he followed the two god spirits, Heros and Zhou Zhou, to the location of the flame-refining Scarlet Army. With the galaxy's astonishing speed, in just 1,300th of a second Zhou Zhou and the others realized that the spaceship had already arrived at its destination. As god spirits, Heros and Zhou Zhou's perception was very sharp. They stood up in shock immediately. What speed is this? The two gods were shocked. They could be considered gods who had seen some of the world. But at this moment, the two gods were still stunned by the speed of the galaxy. One had to know that this was pure speed, not spatial teleportation. The former was actually even harder to achieve than the latter. You don't have to be so surprised. The galaxy is actually a god-tier spaceship. It's the crystallization of the Machina race's technological wisdom. Its speed has already reached 50 billion kilometers an hour. It's normal to be able to do this. Zhou Zhou explained with a faint smile to the two gods. This was not a secret. There was nothing wrong with telling them. The two gods nodded. However, the shock on his face did not dissipate. Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on the scarlet ground below. The scarlet color was nothing else. They were the soldiers of the flame-refining Scarlet Army. They looked like a scarlet flowing curtain from a high place since there were too many of them. A smile appeared on his face. His gaze was a little excited. There were more than 100 million scarlet soldiers. He had never activated insight defection on so many scarlet monsters. You two, do you want to take a walk with me? Zhou Zhou looked at the two god spirits, Heros and Zhou Zhou. The two gods were stunned. It was as if they did not expect Zhou Zhou to make such a request. Heros laughed out loud in no time. How dare an epic-tier kid like you go down there? I'm a high-tier deity-level expert with a full set of divine artifacts after all. Why wouldn't I dare? Heros suddenly stood up and looked at the flame-refining Scarlet Army below with burning eyes. He had long wanted to do something big since he obtained the divine outfit that Zhou Zhou lent him. Otherwise, he would be letting down the explosive god spirit venerable title of the god of blazing sun and burns. Zhou Zhou did not say anything, but he also stood up from his crawling position and looked at Zhou Zhou with his snow-white perverted eyes. Since you're willing, I'll tell you too. I just want to fight easily with the other party and then come back. When the time comes, you must not fight. When they come near our blazing sun kingdom, we can fight them however we want. How about that? Sure. Heros and Zhou Zhou clearly had the same thoughts. They nodded readily. Zhou Zhou nodded and said, Wanya. Your Majesty, Wanya is here. The maid outfit quickly appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. I can release those 10 Apocalypse Satellite 9. Then, after we're done probing, you can control the crowd control Apocalypse Satellite 9 to kill the legendary tier fog monsters among them. Zhou Zhou said, Yes, Your Majesty. Wanya said respectfully. Then, countless codes flashed across her eyes as she silently controlled the 10 Apocalypse Satellite 9 in the arms warehouse to rise into the sky and disappear. Your Majesty, The 10 Apocalypse Satellite 9 has been upgraded to its predetermined orbit. The Apocalypse laser is ready. We can kill the legendary tier fog monsters below at any time. When you trailed off, Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, he did not waste any more time and asked Wenya to open the door of the spaceship. Then, he jumped down from the spaceship with Heros and Zaiwu and flew towards the flame-refining Scarlet Army 100 kilometers below. The human and two gods flew extremely quickly. In less than 10 seconds, they flew about 10 kilometers away from the flame-refining Scarlet Army. From this height, Zhou Zhou and the other two gods could even observe the hair on the Scarlet soldiers below with their astonishing observation skills. Who? At this moment, a cold shout filled with coldness sounded. Then, a purple light soared into the sky from the flame-refining Scarlet Army below and headed straight for them. In the blink of an eye, it arrived not far in front of them. Zhou Zhou and the others looked over. This scarlet monster was wearing purple military armor. Its eyes were long and narrow, and there were two purple blades emitting a deep purple light on its hands. A cold and unholy aura emitted continuously from his body. An abyssal god spirit transformed into a fog existence. From the looks of it, it should be from the void spirit demon race. Zaiwu whispered. Zhou Zhou nodded. The information the other party gave him was a mid-tier deity-level advanced grade god spirit of the void spirit demon race. The void spirit demon race was good at spatial methods. They could fight and run. They were very difficult to deal with even in the abyss. Human race? There are also god spirits of the people of foreign races? Do you have a death wish? How dare you appear in front of our flame-refining Scarlet Army? Osteri looked at them coldly. Even though he sensed that one of their auras had already reached the high-tier deity level. However, with the backing of the flame-refining Scarlet Army and his superb escape ability, he was not afraid at all. You don't know him? Heros had a strange smile on his face as he pointed at Zhou Zhou. A tiny human, an ant-like existence. Why should I know him? Osteri glanced at Zhou Zhou and sneered. Even though Zhou Zhou gave him a special feeling, humans were still humans. What was there to care about the weak humans? At the same time, he was also silently communicating with the experts in the army and asking them to come quickly and destroy the two god spirits and the human race from the people of foreign race. Even though the purpose of their trip was not them, there was no reason to let them go since they had encountered them. On the other side, Heros and Zaiwu shook their heads. They were clearly here for Zhou Zhou, but they actually did not recognize him. Fine. This was indeed in line with the arrogant personality of the abyssal demons. The man and the god looked at each other and instantly understood each other's thoughts. The next second, Zaiwu charged straight at Osteri, while Zhou Zhou used the mid-tier deity level advanced grade divine artifact, Shadow Cloak on him to enter an invisible state and disappear. Then, he charged straight at the army of the flame-refining Scarlet Army below. However, just as he was halfway there, a void spirit demon race scarlet god spirit that emitted the aura of a high-tier deity level flew over from below. A hiding human kid. The other party had clearly discovered Zhou Zhou's location. He raised his hand and launched an illusory blade-shaped attack that emitted sharp spatial fluctuations. Lost skill, spatial blade. It was as if he had teleported. The spatial blade had already arrived in front of Zhou Zhou as soon as it was released. At this moment, Zhou Zhou's heart suddenly rang with alarm. But he was not worried. The next second, a god spirit emitting blazing flames descended from the sky and blocked the spatial blade with a huge fire source shield of the low-tier deity level elementary grade. It was Heros. At that moment, he looked at him. His pair of fire pupils were as dazzling as two suns, and they were getting brighter and brighter. I've been waiting for this battle for a long time, he said in a low voice. It contained the madness and fighting spirit that had been suppressed for a long time. Whoosh! A flame divine axe that was as crystalline as fire glazed appeared in his hand. It was another low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine artifact, the divine fire glazed axe. At the same time, all kinds of divine artifacts flashed on his body. He made a rough count. There were actually 5 to 6 of them. The other party's void spirit god spirit, Gerard, frowned slightly and looked at this guy with surprise. Who is this guy? Why are there so many divine artifacts? Could he be from a powerful divine system like the Sun Shrine of the Sun God system or the Pantheon of the Elemental God system? One had to know that he only had 1 mid-tier deity-level intermediate-grade divine artifact and 2 low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifacts as a god spirit of the Crimson Kingdom. Even though the other party only had a low-tier deity-level elementary-grade divine artifact on him, he had many divine artifacts. As the number of divine artifacts increased, actually, it could also make up for the difference in the level of the divine artifact. There was not much difference between a low-tier deity-level divine artifact and a mid-tier deity-level divine artifact after all. His expression turned solemn. He slowly took out his weapon, a gray hook sickle. Its entire body emitted an abyssal dark aura, making Heros' eyes flash with disgust. The two gods did not say anything else. They rushed towards each other and fought. The two gods, who were focused on the battle, were no longer in the mood to pay attention to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou did not stay idle to watch the battle. Instead, he put on the shadow cloak and continued to fly down. During the flight, he saw scarlet god spirits emitting the aura of god spirits fly past him and fly in the direction of Heros and Zhou. There were a total of 4 of them. There was even a second high-tier deity-level scarlet god spirit among them. On the other scarlet god spirits, 2 of them emitted the aura of low-tier deity level, while the other emitted the aura of a mid-tier deity level. However, these scarlet god spirits did not notice him in the shadow cloak. The shadow cloak was a mid-tier deity-level advanced-grade divine artifact after all. Only a high-tier deity level or even higher-level expert or an anti-hidden law skill of the same level could see through its invisibility. These scarlet god spirits clearly could not do the above 2 points, so they could not discover Zhou Zhou. Soon, he turned invisible and flew about 10,000 meters above the flame-refining scarlet army. Then, he did not attack immediately. Instead, he took out a scroll that emitted the aura of divine power. Scroll name: Guardian of the King of the Sky. Scroll grade: mid-tier deity level advanced grade. Scroll effect: a law scroll made by the King of the Sky, Malachus. Using the scroll, you can release a mid-tier deity level advanced grade law skill once, the Guardian of the King of the Sky. It protects the user for a minute and makes them immune to attacks below the mid-tier deity level. Moreover, it can withstand a full-strength attack from a high-tier deity-level elementary-grade god spirit. This was the loot that Zhou Zhou had extracted from a low-tier deity-level enemy. Originally, it was only a low-tier deity-level advanced-grade law skill scroll, Sky Control. Later on, with the help of the King of Loots, he advanced to the Guardian of the King of the Sky. As long as Heros and Zhou can stall those 2 high-tier deity levels, the effect of this scroll is enough to deal with other mid-tier deity level and low-tier deity level. If it really doesn't work, if a high-tier deity level scarlet god spirit appears, at most, I'll take a galaxy and fly away, Zhou Zhou thought. His internal world still stored the remaining galaxy spaceships. In front of the galaxy's terrifying flying speed, even a high-tier deity level would be inferior. At the thought of this, Zhou Zhou injected the chaotic origin energy in his body into the King of the Sky's Guardian scroll in his hand. Soon, after injecting about 60% of the chaotic origin energy in his body, this scroll suddenly emitted a faint green light. Then, the green light suddenly erupted, forming a green divine power ball that enveloped Zhou Zhou. On the green ball of divine power, there was a faint image of a divine bird with green feathers and purple eyes. It was the law skill, the Guardian of the King of the Sky. Seeing that he was already protected by the law skill, Zhou Zhou could not help but relax, feeling safe. Then, he removed the invisibility of the shadow cloak and exposed himself to the flame-refining scarlet army. Who? Human. How dare you? The moment Zhou Zhou appeared, he was discovered by the Scarlet experts in the billions of Scarlet army below. Many Scarlet experts shouted angrily at Zhou Zhou. There were also some Scarlet experts who rushed out of the army with arms in their hands and charged at Zhou Zhou. They also began to cast spells and shoot arrows on the spot to attack Zhou Zhou. Who am I? Didn't you come here to look for me? Zhou Zhou looked at the scarlet fog monsters coldly. As soon as these words were spoken, all the scarlet monsters were shocked. Then they smiled. He smiled sinisterly. Very good. Since you took the initiative to come up and have a death wish, it saves us from running over to look for you. A purple-robed succubus stuck out her slender forked tongue and licked her lips, her eyes filled with charm. From the aura on his body, he was also a mid-tier deity-level scarlet god spirit. I'll offer you to the Crimson Overlord. I'm sure the Crimson Overlord will be very satisfied. Perhaps it will give us a chance to step into a higher level.
Attack.
The Empire will give whoever captures the King of the Blazing Sun first a chance to become a high-tier deity level. He ordered. As soon as he finished speaking, all the fog monsters went crazy. That was a high-tier deity level. In this era where master god tiers were high and mighty and true god tier could not easily descend to the life form world, high-tier deity level could be said to be the top powerhouses of the high continent. Who could resist this temptation? Therefore, at this moment, all the flying fog soldiers flew crazily in Zhou Zhou's direction. Even the fog monster soldiers who could not fly were all on the ground, releasing their attacks at Zhou Zhou. Facing these attacks, Zhou Zhou, the guardian of the King of the Sky, looked rather calm. He silently activated Earthquake, just as he finished chanting in his heart. The next second, rumble. The ground began to tremble slightly. Regarding this tremble, at first, all the scarlet monsters did not care. After all, the tremors caused by billions of scarlet soldiers marching together were more than this. They realized that something was wrong in no time. Why is the ground shaking more and more? Earthquake? Why is there an earthquake at this time? The scarlet monsters on the ground were a little surprised. As for the fog monsters in the sky, they did not notice the situation on the ground at all. Their minds were only filled with the thought of killing Zhou Zhou in the sky. There's an earthquake? That's not right. There's something wrong with this earthquake. The mid-tier deity-level succubus god spirit also realized that something was wrong with this earthquake. But it was already too late. Rumble. It was as if a world annihilation divine dragon was rolling under the ground. A large area of the ground kept collapsing. Hundreds or thousands of fog monsters fell into the deep pit created by the collapse every second, either dead or injured. Countless underground water surged into the sky, killing countless fog monsters before they could react. 10,000-meter-long cracks kept appearing on the ground. A large number of fog monsters that had not mastered the ability to fly fell into these abyss rifts with terrified expressions and disappeared. All kinds of accompanying earthquake disasters appeared frequently at this moment, displaying the terrifying power of natural disasters to the life forms of the world. The fog monster soldiers of the refined flame Scarlet Legion were already standing very densely. At the moment of the earthquake, it directly killed dozens or even millions of monsters in this sudden earthquake. The succubus god spirit who had ordered the attack at the beginning was completely stunned. He never expected that. They had already suffered such a huge loss before they even officially began their offensive. And all of this should have been brought by the King of the Blazing Sun. At the thought of this, he looked at Zhou Zhou with even more resentment. In the sky, the Scarlet Monster had already arrived in front of Zhou Zhou and launched all kinds of offensive attacks. However, in front of the Guardian of the King of the Sky, these offensive attacks were directly immune to him and were no threat to him at all. Zhou Zhou ignored the ferocious expressions of the fog monsters outside the barrier. He raised his right hand and activated Insight Defection without hesitation. The next second, an invisible fluctuation instantly covered the billions of scarlet fog monsters. A text notification appeared. Prompt: you have activated your Lord's exclusive talent, Insight Defection. Insight Defection has taken effect. Lord Talent Notification. There are a total of 11,242,200 Black Iron Tier Fog Monsters, 8,117,002 Green Bronze Tier Fog Monsters, 4,001,632 white silver tier fog monsters, 2,149,660 yellow gold tier fog monsters, 1. 515, 11 white platinum tier fog monsters, 881,200 diamond tier fog monsters, 111,350 extraordinary tier fog monsters, 32,552 epic tier fog monsters, and 104 legendary tier fog monsters have betrayed their lord's faction and become your loyal subordinates. When Zhou Zhou saw these text notifications, he quickly calculated the results in his heart. Then, a smile appeared on his face. This insight defection had made a total of 27,807,373 fog monsters his subordinates. I didn't come all the way here in vain, he thought.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.